Well, once a week, it's time to go inside EMS and formerly known as the Chris and Kelly Show, the almost famous Chris and Kelly Show. We are the famous Inside EMS podcast. I am your host, Chris Cebollero, and with me always is the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. The ladies know he's
Ladies
the
know
man
I have
with
the
power,
power.
Kelly Grayson KG. What's going on up there in the North Country, close to Canada?
It's going well, man. I've been busy doing conferences and whatnot every weekend. Last weekend we got to bring the Sharon EMS symposium back to the folks of Northern Connecticut and Eastern New York and Mass. So it was good, man. We enjoyed the heck out of it, and I've just now been able to sit down and take a breather because every weekend's been going somewhere.
You have to be the busiest man in EMS when it
Oh,
comes to
not, I wish.
EMS education. Who do you think travels more than you to go to different
Well, yeah,
conferences?
there are probably a few that travel more than me. I don't know. I hope they get paid well for what they do it because it's airline travel ain't glamorous anymore, man. It's
It's
remember
not.
when we were kids, it was cool to go fly
Stop
somewhere on the
going. Don't go back to that. Don't go
now
back to
they
when
now
we
that
were
it's
kids.
like, they pack you on the car like cattle and ugh.
Yeah, so I'll be on the EMS World Tour myself. Actually, it's not EMS, it's outside of EMS, but I'll be traveling to Europe to do some speaking and training in Europe. 25th of March. I won't be back until the 10th of April. And we will have our international correspondent, Rob Lawrence, sitting in the host chair with you, Kelly Grayson. You guys are going to take the helm in my absence about 3 shows. And it's always great when Rob comes in. We want to give him a plug for his show, the EMS One Stop. And he has some great guests on his show. Let me tell you
Yeah.
what. I don't know where he pulls some of these people from. We may have to check to see if he's creating them with AI, but he's got some good names on his
We
show.
have to we have to snag his contact list and mine it for ourselves.
Yeah, but well, we don't want to do that. What we want to be able to do is probably take his shows and kind of take a little bit of segment of them and talk about it here and play a little clip and send
Yeah.
some people over to the EMS One Stop.
Yeah.
And but Rob, I've been a big fan of his. Rob and I used to podcast together for about 5 or 6 years with Don Lundy, Patrick
Yeah. Remember
Pianezza
that.
on the EMS Leadership podcast. And
Yeah.
that's how I met Rob. He was the big leader over there in the Richmond Ambulance Authority for a long time and one of our go-to leaders in EMS. But I think those are all the talking points he gave me, so I'm going to move off that. But I'll be doing the EMS. I'll be doing the Leadership World Tour, the really World
Nice.
Tour,
Nice.
starting next week. So I usually try to,
Chris in Europe, that's going to be a shock to a
as
shock to the
one of my
system.
goals, my personal goals is, I'm known as for my leadership in Australia. I have clients and folks that follow me there. I have small following in Asia. Europe is pretty big, especially in England and the Netherlands. And I have a client that I work with in Italy. But my goal is to be known on 4 continents. So if anybody knows anybody in Antarctica, please come forward so we can
The last thing those people need in that
part of
South
the
Pole
world.
station is
Come on.
you. They're already beating each other up. So
Well, I think what is going to happen is I'll be so hot, I'll start to melt the environment. So they may need to
right,
stay out of
right.
it.
I have visions of Chevy Chase just laying waste to Europe in European vacation.
European vacation. Look,
Yeah.
everybody, Big Ben. So, Kelly, as we start this show, it's Wellness Week, right? And
Hmm.
I think that one of the things that we need in EMS is wellness. And basically, from, our own health, our own mental health, how we are able to take care of ourselves. You and I have been in EMS a combined, what, 60, 70 years?
Yeah.
And we know that this is not a career field that allows us to take the best of care of ourselves.
No.
We have long hours, we don't get to eat right. We have a lot of stress, we have a lot of anxieties, running call, whatever it is, man. And when we think of wellness, and we were talking about how do we talk about wellness, it really reverts back to you, right? When you and I
Yeah.
first started this show many years ago, you were presenting as a different individual.
Yeah.
And we've talked about your transformation over the last year and a half, 2 years. And really, it was came out of a really big health scare
Yeah.
to where I may have been here this morning just talking to myself because Kelly Grayson,
Yeah.
could have been worm food and
Yeah.
a
Very
couple of
close.
years ago. But one of the things that I've always said is that when we gain weight or when we put ourselves in the positions that we're in, I do a lot of sitting at the desk and I'm starting to feel my shoulders tighten up, my hips are starting to tighten up. I'm not taking care of myself. But
Yeah.
Kelly, I think you're our guide right now to make the determination of how do we get well? How do we get healthy? How do we put ourselves on the path? But just to remind people, you started this journey where and where have you gotten to right now?
In January of 2023, I weighed 410 pounds. And it pains me to say that my weight began with a four, but it was pretty bad. And it seems like at age 50, when the warranty runs out and all the parts start breaking, and in 2022, I had the spinal surgery. I just have no idea how I collapsed the disc in my neck. I just woke up one day and my arm hurt. It's one of those things. Maybe I just overdid myself. I paddled a canoe for about 36 miles in 3 days, and maybe a 50-something-year-old man who is overweight and out of shape shouldn't paddle a canoe that far. But I had my spinal surgery and recovered fully from that. I was proud of myself for bouncing back so well at my age. And then April the 14th of last year, I had a massive pulmonary embolus. The only way it would have been worse was a saddle embolus, and you would have been doing this podcast by yourself. But major clots in all of my lung arteries, and very nearly died. And in typical paramedic fashion, I ignored it, toughed it out until the worst was over, and went and saw my personal doctor a week and a half later. It was bad, and that wrecked me pretty bad. I lost my heat tolerance, and living in the South Louisiana where the summertime the humidity is 90 by 9, 90 degrees, 90% humidity by 9 a.m. It's tough. So I moved that's what brought me to the North Country, and I had the opportunity to enroll in a fitness center and start to get myself in better shape. If we're real talk, that opportunity was there before. I just didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And you got to hit me over the head with a hammer to make me see the point. And I realized that death was staring me in the face. I wasn't probably going to be alive in another 10 years, much less working in an ambulance unless I got something done. So
Yeah, so when you
I,
think about that, I'm interested because I think we all have to think about our own mortality, right? I mean, a lot of EMS folks, they're overweight, they're not in shape, they don't eat right. And then we talked about all the stresses and things that we have to go through in our job, A mother hands you a 3-month-old that's in cardiac arrest. Pucker factor is pretty high, as well
yeah,
as that stress that we carry with us for the rest of the day and the next couple days if the call doesn't turn out the right way. But you were really looking at death, man. I
yeah,
mean, you were gone from the show for about 6 weeks as you started to rehabilitate. But as you stare into the face of death
yeah.
and say, "Oh my God, if I don't change my ways," I mean, what was that like for you?
It was scary, and you can remember times on this podcast when you could hear me breathing.
Yeah.
And back in the day, Greg Freese at an EMS conference asked about my health because I was sweating so profusely at the conference hall, which that hasn't changed. I think I weigh 110 pounds and I would sweat like a pig. But you get scared, and just utterly frightened. I remember at the time desperately trying to diagnose myself because there's never been a point in my life where my head couldn't get me out of a jam, and I couldn't problem solve and figure out what was going on. And at one point I thought, you idiot, what are you doing this for? Are you doing this so you have the satisfaction of dying knowing what killed you? You know what the culprit was. And I when I came up here to the North Country and started teaching at the university up here, I remember having to walk up the stairs, and I would be profusely sweating by the time I walked up the stairs, and my knees were absolutely killing me. So I said I'm gonna go see a doctor, which is not something I normally do. And I told my new doctor I need a referral for an orthopedic surgeon to look at my knees. And he said, "What's wrong with your knees?" I said, "I have pretty severe arthritis, self-diagnosed." He checked me out and he said, "Well, look, we can do something for that right now until you see the orthopedic surgeon." And he gave me cortisone shots in my knees, game changer. And at least I could walk without severe pain. And I started exercising, and it's dead simple, man. Expend more calories every day than you consume. That is it in a nutshell, and it's worked for me. I
Yeah, so
think
let's
the
yeah, let's
Go
let's
ahead.
take that step by step, man, because I think it's really important. So I want to be able to put this into a little psychology as well, right?
Hmm.
So you had a motivation,
Yeah,
and the motivation was death. The motivation was, oh my gosh, what the heck's happening to me?
yeah.
And
And you
now
look
what?
in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself. It's
Yeah,
it's a jarring thing.
but there has to be a catalyst, right? So motivation is internal, and you have to be able now to do the things that you have to do to get yourself to a better place. And one of the things that I tell people all the time is we are quick fixers. We want quick fixers, right? We have drive-through
Hmm.
fast food. We have microwaves. We want a world that's going to take care of us and get the things that we want today. And
Yeah,
I have to remind people that how long did it take you to put weight on? How long did it take you to get to be 410 pounds?
yeah,
And you now cannot lose 300 pounds in, or whatever it is you're trying to do, 250 pounds in a year, in six
yeah,
months, right? And
yeah.
you've been on this journey now for a year and a half, right?
Year and a
So
half solid.
when you
Yeah,
talk about 410 pounds, you're now 260, 270.
267.
Yeah. So you are, and I'll tell you, man, you and I are the same weight. I weigh
Really
260. I weigh 265.
awesome.
So now it makes me feel bad. Now I got to probably lose a few pounds. But I never saw a day, man, where you'd be lighter than me on this show. So now I have to. But anyway, to my point,
There's your motivation.
right. But where's the motivation to do it? And you have to be able to set that in your mind. And this really goes to a point of your subconscious mind saying, well, if you're never going to lose weight, because we keep telling ourselves, I'm
Yeah,
never going to lose weight. I'm never going to be 200 pounds again. I'm never going to quit smoking. I'm never going to be successful. And the more that we tell ourselves those things,
yeah,
the more and more that our subconscious mind wants to make that true for us, because your subconscious mind believes everything that you believe. If you believe you're a
yeah,
failure, if you believe you're never going to lose weight, if you believe you're never going to quit smoking, your subconscious mind puts your body into play to make that truth a reality for you.
yeah.
And really, when you start to think about, Kelly, the psychology of losing weight, how much did your mental mindset come
Oh,
into
it,
play
it
for
had to
that?
change dramatically. And my depression probably played a huge role in this. I've always been able to, the really galling thing about it is I've always been able to lose weight when I put my mind to it. 18 years ago, I was working in a hospital as a paramedic in the emergency department, and we had a weight loss contest, and that was my motivation, and I lost 76 pounds in 4 months, and I was killing it. And then I got back on an ambulance, and that lifestyle, working nights on an ambulance, did me in. But if I'm honest about that, I also, it wasn't just the lifestyle. I acquiesced to the myth that you can't take good care of yourself working on an ambulance,
Well,
and
it goes
gained
back to
every
it goes back to mindset.
yeah, got every bit of that weight gained back and added about 70 pounds on top of that, 60 pounds on top of that. And it was as simple as this. I said, look, baby steps. I'm going to first get myself where I can exercise, find an exercise I can do, and I'm going to watch what I eat. And that's what I did. I I would not recommend the calorie regimen that I put myself on. It works for me. I wouldn't recommend it to other people. But I was limiting myself to 1,500 calories a day. and then exercising in the pool, swimming somewhere close to 7 miles a week. I started off in that pool barely able to walk,
Yeah,
and I would,
you weren't swimming. You were walking laps for a
yeah, I
long
was
time.
walking. I was running. I put on my water shoes so I could have some grip on the pool floor, and I would run from the starting blocks to the middle of the pool where it got too deep to run. So I'm running in waist to neck deep water, and did that as fast as I could for as long as I could. And when I first did it, I could do 40 something laps in an hour. And then within a week or two, you see measurable progress. Hey, I'm not so winded. I can do 50 something laps in an hour. Toward the end, I could do 70 something laps in an hour, 73, 74 laps in 1 hour. And I could keep going, and I could run for 2 hours if I wanted to. And my philosophy was, every time it starts to get easy, make it hard again.
Sure.
Don't accept the fact that you can do this anymore. Make it hard to do.
Yeah.
So eventually I started swimming, and I could swim maybe 50 laps with my PE. I don't my my aerobic capacity is probably never going to be what it was. I
Did
could
you
never.
do some long-term damage then? Some damage that one? Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
so. I couldn't just swimming freestyle. I found myself, trying to catch my breath every other stroke, and I just had no rhythm. I just
Mhm.
couldn't keep it up. So I started swimming with a snorkel instead, so I could breathe as fast as I needed to for as long as I needed to, and I do that. And now
Yeah,
I'm up
interesting.
to. I run out of time in the pool before I run out of energy. The pool's not open long enough for me to find out how much I can do, but I'm pretty sure I can probably do 200 laps in 3 hours.
It's
Uh,
crazy. So one
yeah,
of the things that I want to talk about is when we think about goals for Wellness Week, you said goals, right? I
yeah,
mean,
oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry, when you talk about Wellness Week, it's important that you set goals. And you set goals for yourself. You just said it, right? So as soon as I knew that it got easy, I increased it. And then you had a goal of where you wanted to
yeah,
do that. But I do want to ask you this because there's a lot of people who are in the same boat that you are. Some won't admit it. You have been very, very honest on this show over the
yeah.
years about your depression, about your mental wellness. How did you fight that? How did you get to a point of saying, this is it and I'm not turning back?
The thing for me with my depression has always been care, realizing that just breaking this pattern. When you realize that when you should be writing columns for EMS1 and writing your books and short stories, and what you've been doing for the last month is sitting with your computer on your lap with 7 open Word tabs, and there's titles there but no writing. And what you're doing at 3 a.m. is eating crackers and doing drive-by
Cheetos.
Facebook witticisms at 3 a.m. with people you don't know. When you see that, what I had always done is start forcing myself to do the things that I always enjoyed, but my depression tells me you don't have the time or the money or the energy to do this. I'd start doing those things, taking care of myself emotionally, doing the things that brought me joy, even though they didn't really bring me joy in the midst of my depression. I just kept doing them until I rediscovered what I got out of them.
Yeah.
And the same way with losing my weight this time, I set a goal, and I have a calorie and fitness tracker. I set a goal to lose 2 pounds a week. I didn't quite lose 2 pounds a week. I didn't beat myself up over that, but I did take pleasure, mental and emotional pleasure in seeing progress. So I was, hey man, I lost a pound and a half this week, or 2 weeks ago I was 8 pounds higher,
Yeah.
heavier than I am now. And some days, you lose a little progress, and then the next time you step on the scale, you lost 6 pounds in 2 days. But just that steady watching that weight graph go steadily down, I took heart in that, and the more I did, the better I felt.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I had a friend of mine who he was, 450 pounds and he lost, 180 pounds or whatever it was. He was like 170. So do the math. But I asked him, I said, how did you lose 150 pounds? He goes, I didn't. He goes, I lost 6 and then I lost 8 and then I
Yep.
lost 4 and then I
Yep.
lost. And then after each milestone, he would reward himself. He said, I'd eat a pizza or I'd have 2 cheeseburgers
Yeah.
or I'd have a half a gallon of ice cream,
Yeah.
and then I would get back on the goals again.
Yeah.
And then over the course of 18 months, it was a year and a half, Kelly, if not a little bit more. He got himself down to 170 pounds. And of course, he looked really amazing. But I do
Yeah.
want to ask you this, because I think that when we think about tips for Wellness Week, we really have to think about how, on the ambulance, we don't get to eat as well as we do, but our
Yeah.
snacking is really out of control. We go
Yeah.
into the, Circle K or the Quick Trips or the, whatever convenience stores are on your staging, areas,
Yeah.
and we get the hot dog and we get the bag of chips and we get that donut and
Yeah.
we get that, all those things. So when we think about changing our snacking habits, what kind of tips do you have for listeners as they go into these convenience stores and they're really bored and they're going to use food to change, help the boredom?
Yeah. That EMS lifestyle, the 3 a.m. convenience store burrito is deadly.
And I
And
love the convenience store hot dog, by the way. I
yeah,
love the convenience store hot dog.
I'll allow myself those now and then, but when you're trying to keep below 1,500 calories a day, you it's not specifically low fat or low carb, but if you're going to keep below that calorie count, you have to avoid calorie dense foods. So what I started doing was I started, number one, packing food with me to go, and I would bring paninos, Fiorucci prosciutto paninos, and I would eat those. And two of those, 125 calories, and they'll fill you a little bit. And I would, instead of getting a Snickers bar, I would get a Kind bar or a Nature Valley granola bar, that sort of thing, and do that. And now, thank God, with Stewart's shops so prevalent in New York State and the Northeast corridor, they have soups every day. So I am a I am a firm believer in Stewart's hearty chicken noodle soup because I can eat 16 ounces of soup for 200 calories, and I don't like to think what it does to my sodium. But it's definitely not a low sodium diet. But my sodium's fine now that I've got my weight under control. But I just remind myself to eat at regular intervals and don't just constantly snack all day. I'll have a protein shake for breakfast. I'll eat a couple of paninos and a diet microwave cardboard meal for lunch. And then for dinner, Nancy will make me something nutritious and professionally prepared. A professional chef has prepared these meals for me, and they're healthy. Problem is with Nancy's cooking is it's so good that if I only ate one serving, it would be healthy. But I'm tempted to eat two or three servings, so I have to really practice a lot of discipline there.
Yeah, I
But the
think you go
cool
back
thing about
you
yeah,
go back to that mindset again.
yeah, the cool thing about this is if I want a donut, I'll have a donut. At this point, I'm not going to go crazy with it, and I have what's the old saying? You can't go on a diet. What you have to do is change your eating habits and change your lifestyle. And that's what I did. That's
Yeah.
what the goal wasn't to necessarily do that, but that's what it becomes if you stick with it long enough. And I have discovered now that I have retrained my metabolism. Those late nights on the ambulance where you don't know when you're going to eat or if you're going to eat. So when you do, you gorge yourself at odd hours, and your body's metabolism just never knows when it's going to get fed. So you turn into a fat storing machine. Now I've discovered that, and this galls Nancy to no end, if I don't eat especially healthy, if I'm not real strict with my calorie intake, and I haven't been in the pool for a couple of 3 weeks because of conferences, I can still go step on the scale and I'm still a pound lighter than I was when I started.
Yeah,
So
very cool. So
yeah,
I think that
yesterday.
I think the big message out there is that, and I don't mean to be, pointing a finger, Kelly, or disrespectful, but if you can do it, anybody can do it, right? I
Yes,
mean,
that's
because
true.
our time together, you've tried this a couple times,
Yeah.
you've had a little bit success, you've fallen off the wagon, you've
Hmm.
gained weight again, but really now to your being a role model in this
Yeah.
area. And that's why we're talking to you about, as we were talking
Yeah.
about who the heck can we get on to talk about Wellness Week. And then it really came down to the realization of you've been living it for the past year and a half.
Hmm.
And really, if you can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
give people your closing thought on Wellness Week. based on your experiences and motivate and inspire some of the people who may be listening.
Yeah. Folks, if you're working the ambulance and you're living that lifestyle, I'm here to tell you that you can break that cycle. All you have to do is get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and take small steps. Start to watch what you eat, start to watch the quantities of what you eat, but you do not have to hurt yourself, starve yourself to eat a healthy lifestyle. There are foods you can choose that you can maintain a certain calorie count and still enjoy eating. But the main thing is you have to get active. And EMS is not an active profession. It's 23 hours of boredom and snacking convenience store foods, and then an hour of blind panic every shift. You can break that cycle, and it's simple things. You can work out in your living room and burn calories and regain muscle mass and muscle tone. You just have to do it. And that's the thing about it. You have to get serious about what you want to feel like, what you want to look like, and keep working toward that goal and take pleasure in the small victories, because a whole lot of small victories equals, Kelly's lost 146 pounds, 148 pounds, and I am 27 pounds from my goal weight.
So you said what you want to look like. Are you going to change your physical looks too? Do we have to keep looking at this?
Oh, maybe in the show notes, I'll put up a picture. We'll put up a picture of what I looked like before I got into EMS. And I keep that as motivation when I was training retrievers professionally, what I looked like then. But even better, in Nebraska, at the EMS conference in Nebraska, week before last, I went to the Cabela's, the flagship, the original Cabela store, and I bought a new pair of jeans, 42 waist size.
Wow.
So,
What were you,
no, 40, 40.
what were you
I've
at
literally lost a foot.
4'10"? What was your waist size?
52,
Wow.
52 waist, and now I have a 40 waist.
Very cool.
So I've lost a foot. I am no longer bigger around than I am tall. And it's a good thing. But if I can do this, you can do this too. It is not simply a matter of willpower, but support and attainable goals in short increments adds up to a lot over the years. But that's what we think. We'd like to hear what you think. Have you been on that weight loss journey and that fitness journey? Have you made progress? What special tips and tricks work for you? Because I'd be interested in hearing that. Give us a call at the show at ems1.com. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes for myself and co-host Chris Cebollero, same size as me. Thanks for tuning in to Inside EMS. We're going to catch y'all next week.